Okay, niche work, if you can get it. Niche, stream platforms, legacy branding, and CeeSo. So we go back to Amanda Lotz, right? And on 220, we're starting to talk about alternative models that thrive on specialty, distinction, and niche taste. Specialty, distinction, and niche taste. Right? This feeds into a notion of curation, right? So we haven't talked about the Criterion collection in this class, but this is basically what it's based on, right? Or something like Mubi, right? Or even Vimeo, as opposed to Netflix. Mubi is kind of entirely based on this notion of curation. That it's for the people that are more distinguished or cultured, right, as opposed to like the mainstream, right? And what this also ultimately feeds into is targeting, right? So becoming more and more individualized, right, in how you're interpolating your consumers, right? However, on 221, I do want to point out this kind of key line that Sandler brings up, and it's really just kind of an aside. But think about, and this is at the very bottom, partial paragraph, quote, "Even when describing these outlets as niche, it is hard to think about services owned respectively by mass conglomerates, Comcast and Time Warner, as small." This issue of scale, right? I think about this in terms of when people, it's not necessarily that they have intense, I mean, even me, I had a very intense relationship with Star Wars at one point in my life. And it's not even necessarily an issue about the intensity, but to treat that as something that's entirely individual and exclusive and unique kind of phrase, right? It's like, yes, I had a really intense relationship with Star Wars. So did millions of other people. Similarly, it's kind of funny when something is selling itself as niche, right? And just for you when it's owned by a conglomerate, right? So even if one of their services is niche, right? They also own something like, CBS, right? Which has a bunch of shows that are certainly not niche, right? But entirely mainstream. I think, did Big Bang Theory come up at some point? Big Bang Theory is a great example of really kind of marketing towards the niche of a kind of geek or nerd culture, but as that becoming, the mainstream, right? Star Wars is also a great example in that regard, or the Disney Marvel movies for sure too. On 222, this is really eye-opening to this, exactly to this point. The amount of services, online services, that Time Warner, actually, let's kind of put it on the board, that Time Warner has its fingers in. So Time Warner. So CW Seed, Filmstruck for classic films, Drama Fever for Korean dramas, Machinima for games, Uninterrupted with LeBron James, I don't know why I said it that way, and Maverick Carter, Ellen Digital Ventures for Ellen DeGeneres, HBO Now, is there anything else? But yeah, in real, basically between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you might be niche of niche, but your money is still going to Time Warner, and you're still sharing space with people who watch Machinima, HBO, and the CW, right? That's really the lesson of all this, is it doesn't matter how niche it is, if it's still going here, you're still sending money to the man, right? Okay, rounding the corner. Back to the bundle, the paradox of choice, VRV, and the future of network streaming. On 226, I just want to point out these statistics. It's kind of crazy, but just the success of premium cable TV apps. Amazon Channels accounts for, this is the first full paragraph, Amazon Channels accounts for 53% of HBO streaming signups, 72% of Showtime OTT, this is in 2018, and 70% of Starz OTT signups. That compares to 47% of signups, directly through HBO's app, 26% directly through Showtime, and 30% directly through Starz. So with Showtime, Starz, and HBO, for all the people that are signing up on the channel directly, Amazon, basically kind of all but dwarfs those numbers, right? And just this is really the kind of shift that we're seeing. Finally, to get to, like where we're all going with this, what Sandler refers to as the new big five, which are data juggernauts. What makes them the big five? It's not that they're in media. It's not that they're internet technologies and platforms. It's that they're data. This is all about data. It's always been about data. It's about your data. It's about my data. It's about how we seemingly can't escape this. I mean, we are on a big data platform right now as we speak. Big five: Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, and Amazon. And in that sense, this class has always been about data, and it's always been about conglomeration, right? So finally, just the last thought that I will leave you with, to return to the bubble. This is that last full paragraph about midway through. When does the bubble burst? When do consumers reach their breaking point of how many subscriptions they are willing to pay for? So we are living in a historical moment, not just with streaming, of course, but with everything else going on. But I just want to emphasize and highlight this idea of the breaking point. So in this case, Sandler is talking about how much are we willing to put up with in terms of all these streaming services and all the data collection. At what point are we going to stop subscribing to stuff and say enough is enough, and that's when the bubble will burst and even more services will kind of go out of business and such. But just in this also, just like a notion of a breaking point in general, right? Like how much are people we all willing to put up with, right? Is really the question of tolerance, the question of bandwidth, right? And, for that to happen, like for someone to reach a breaking point, there needs to be, like it needs to kind of go past a certain threshold, right? Which means that there's some sort of acknowledgement of a problem, but we need to get there first, right? So that's all I'm trying to point out is, just in general, just broadly, not just with streaming, not just with media, but just in general sense, just to ask yourself, and let's ask all of ourselves, how kind of aware are we about the things, similar in the way that she's posing these questions, as people, just, alive in the 21st century, how aware are we of the things that are going on that maybe we shouldn't be putting up with, That's really what I want to add. Okay, that's it for today. Please enjoy the weekend, stay safe, let me know if you need anything, and again, let's continue the conversation on Moodle. I will see you there.